Hey everyone, Adrian here. Welcome to Wild Bush and Grit. This video, I'm super excited about this one. Cooking is one of my strong passion in life. Cooking brought me to hunting actually, and my whole reason of doing this, the channel and all that, is because of cooking. So I have a couple of advice. That video has been turning in my head over a couple of last month, and I really trying to find what are the easy thing people could do. And it's not about equipment. It's not about buying these knives and cooking on a open fire and all that. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's more like things to be aware of and paradigm shift in the way you approach cooking. All right. Tips number 4 could be a little bit about equipment, but we'll get to it. So tips number 1 is really, when you're harvesting an animal, make sure that you age that meat well before eating it. I've had tenderloin on the same day of the kill, and the same animal, the other half of the tenderloin, a couple of days later, and it makes a world of difference. The same day, the meat is going to be tougher, not as tender as if you were to wait. For us, the deer, we will hang them for about a week before processing it. We hang them the head up to allow all the fluids to drain. If you do it heads down, most of the fluids will accumulate near the neck area, and for the aging process, this part will stay humid and it's not going to be nice. Actually, you start developing foul odors. So make sure heads up, break the bones between the legs to make sure that that bone doesn't create like a cut or like a retention for the fluid to drain out, and let the meat cool down as it goes. To me, I like to think that my cooking starts as soon as I press the trigger. I want a double long shots to bleed the animal completely. I want to retrieve that animal as fast as I can, to gut it out and cool that meat down. And this makes a world of difference in the quality of the meat that you're harvesting in the end. Okay. So tips number 1, make sure that you let the meat die, and by letting the meat die, I mean aging the meat. It doesn't have to be a month. 1 week is fine. For birds, I usually hang, actually right here, I will hang them for about a day, 2 days before processing them for the freezer or for eating. So that's for the meat. What about fish? Fish, usually I will try to eat them as fast as I can. And the true things I will always do to a fish that I know that I'm going to eat is I'm going to bleed it. A little whack on the head, stun them, cut the gills, let them bleed, and gut them right away. I will never let the gut in a fish in the fridge, for example. I will always remove the gill and the internal organ as fast as I can. And a fish that has been bled properly will actually stay longer, will preserve longer in the refrigerator over a fish that hasn't been bled. And it will also taste better. The meat is going to be like nice pearly white. You will not have like dark spot when you're lifting up your fillet. So that was tips number 1. Tips number 2, the touchy subject of marinating. So to marinate something, by definition, is to impart flavor. Okay, you have a piece of meat, you're making a roast, you want to rub it with all sorts of spice and salt, and you want these spices to actually go inside the meat. There are 3 ingredients that I don't use in marinade because I find them to be counterproductive to that goal of infusing flavor. The first one is fat. Okay, yeah, lots of eyebrows are being raised right now. By the way, I know how personal cooking is to each other, and it's very subjective. And I don't mean to criticize how people are doing things. I'm simply stating what I have observed, and by years and years and years of cooking experience, like I've tried various things, and this is, after 25 plus years of cooking, this is my those rules are the rules in my kitchen, and they do bring nice results. So as I was saying, I'm not using oil in my marinade, and the reason behind it is the fat will coat a protective layer on the meat, and the transfer of fluid, the salt through osmosis, will penetrate the meat and bring those flavor inside the meat. And by using oil, you're actually preventing that contact to happen. So you're hindering the osmosis process that will impart flavor to your meat. Of course, I will add oil at the very, like, for example, I will marinate the piece for 24 hours. On the day of the cooking, I will let the meat take room temperature. Then I will rub it with a nice, coat of oil at that time, because it has already marinated. The salt needs 12 hours for every centimeter of meat. So that's a good something to know. So if you want to marinate a thick piece, know that every 12 hours your salt will go 1 centimeter inside the meat. So I will dry out that part. I will rub it with some oil, and then I will send it whatever, the barbecue or searing or whatever the recipe was calling for. The second thing I don't use is alcohol and acidic fluid, like lemon juice, for example, or vinegar. The reason for that is the acid or alcohol will start the cooking process, and in a way they will ruin the texture, where they're in contact with the meat. And again, I'm not saying it doesn't impart flavor. It does impart flavor. Having a whiskey marinated piece of meat will impart a lot of flavor. What I'm saying is you can preserve the texture of the meat and still impart whiskey flavor in your dish by just making, once your meat, your steak is done, for example, you put it on the side in the same pan, add your whiskey, add some butter, whatever the herbs you wanted, throw in a match in it, let it flambe nicely, and then you can use that reduction, that sauce, to bring back the whiskey flavor that you wanted to have in the first place. And by doing so, not only you preserve the texture of your meat, but now you're also adding the texture of the whiskey, the taste of the whiskey to it. And same thing for acidic element. But yeah, now you'll be saying, like, yeah, but what about fish? And ceviche. Ceviche is a different thing. Ceviche, you actually want a little bit of cooking through the acid, so it's normal to have that process. And usually you don't cook the ceviche. The marinade is the cooking in the case of a ceviche. So that was tips number 2. Tips number 3, the use of stocks. Often you're cooking and then the recipe called for a cup of water. No, don't do that. Water will add nothing besides just moisture. When you're cooking, you're trying as much as possible to add flavor to your dish. Adding water is just adding air. It doesn't contribute beside the moisture of your fluid level. If you were to add some stocks, this will already impart some body to the dish that you're cooking. Now you can get your stock at the supermarket, beef, chicken, vegetable. This is all great, but it's even better if you were to make your own stock. And what I mean by that is you can truly customize your stock to the recipe that you're going to make. Usually when I do some stock, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to do them as minimalistically as possible. But when I have an idea in mind, I will already start using the flavor. Hey, cat. I will already use sorry, the cat distracted me. I will start that stock with that recipe in mind, using the spices that I know. So for example, if I'm making like a soup, I'm gonna start using the herbs or the spice that I want for that specific soup. All right. So that was tips number 3. Tips number 4, Teflon. Now, I know Teflon could be a non-stick pan, is all about convenience. The problem with them is often they're first aluminum, so I don't use aluminum pan because first, I think aluminum has very poor heat transmission. It doesn't heat up properly, it doesn't retain heat as good as stainless steel or carbon steel or cast iron does. And the non-stick surfaces have very, very poor Maillard reaction. Your Maillard reaction is greatly reduced when you're using a non-stick pan. You cannot get great crust on a steak using a non-stick pan. This is just, you will get the best result using cast iron, for example. To me, steaks in a cast iron or carbon steel, this is the way to cook. So never I never use non-stick pan and never use aluminum pan. Yes, it's a little bit of a hassle to use cast iron and carbon steel. You have to know how to use them in order to have them to be non-stick. But it is possible. I actually have video about it. You can look up. I'm gonna link those up, and the little technique, things you could do here and here to help your cast iron cooking. So that was tips number 4. Tips number 5 is, and actually that links back a little bit to tips number 4, but it's the use of heat. Overall, in my observation, I think people use too much heat when they're cooking, and the use of high heat is desirable when you want to crust something, when you want to sear something, when you want to melt and crust cheese over a pizza, for example. Those are the rare instances where I'm going to use a high heat situation. But overall, I will try to reduce the heat as much as I can, depending on the time of cooking that I have. So for example, and the reason why I want longer cooking time is, and again, I'm not after convenience here, but when I'm cooking, I don't mind whether it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 hours to get to where I want. So I will cook things as slow as possible, as slow as time permit. The reason behind that is the spices, the element, the ingredient that you have will release their flavor slowly over time. And if you cook things too quickly, your pepper will not have time to release its oil and be fragrant in your dish, for example. It's just an example, okay? It's like not pepper specifically, but overall, when you're using spice or fine herbs, you need to give them the time to release their fragrance and their aroma for them to be, to develop the full flavor that they're capable of. I'm highly distracted by this cat right now. This is our house cat. She's wonderful. So that was tips number 5. Tips number 6. It's about the use of fat, and more specifically to game meat, and how I will use them sometime to help people that are shy to game meat, but to eat meat. So for example, if I have a friend over, never had venison, he's a bit wary of it, not sure. The first thing I'll do is I will use a very lean cut for him. And reason is fat holds lots of flavor. When you're tasting beef fat or lamb fat, pork fat, it has a very distinctive flavor, and you cannot mistake for anything else. Same thing for deer and venison or even bear. They have strong distinctive flavor that people are not accustomed to, and they were like, oh yeah, it could be a mental blockage for some people. So what I like to do is I like to substitute the fat that I'm using. So I will either use duck fat or beef fat to make a venison steak, and that person will already, that person knows beef, for example, and for them it's a nice bridge from a place that they know, and then you add the venison on it. So it's really smooth in that transition and that discovery of wild games. So there you have it. Those are my 6 5+1 tips on how to cook better at home, and I'm sure you have your way of doing it. Please do share. Please add to this list. This is not, of course, exhaustive, and other people can learn. I can learn from you, and we can all grow together. This is the goal. This is why I'm doing this. I love this so much. To me, this is a true passion, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This is, yeah. So if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, share it with your friends. Do me a huge favor, please subscribe. I have way more content. Go on my main channel page. I'm sure there are videos that you will find. I hunt, I fish, I do all sorts of things, adventures. That's what I do, that's what I love, and please join me and let's improve each other together. All right, folks, have a good one. Be safe out there, have fun out there, and I'll see you in the next video. See you, folks. Bye-bye.